Hello. Thank you for joining us today on Snow the Goalie, one of the many Flyers podcasts available in the greater Philadelphia area. My name is Russ Joy. My co-host is Anthony Sanfilippo. Welcome. It's been a little bit. Anthony, how are you today?
I'm wonderful, Russ. And it's only been a little bit. Got to remember, keep in mind. Now, we did say we were going to record last week and didn't, but the thought process is this. If we recorded last week as we had originally said, then we would have skipped this week because it's a holiday week. Because we normally record on like a Thursday. With Thanksgiving, it would have been really tough. So bumping it just a handful of days to get through another couple of games to get to a recording on a Tuesday night kind of piecemeals the 2 weeks where we would have lost one anyway. So we snuck one in between. I think that's probably we just kind of bumped it so we got a few more games to talk about, so it's a little bit more fresh for people who might be listening over the holiday.
Anthony's a spin master. What actually happened here is he and Bundy both ghosted me for the better part of a week and a half.
That's
But I
exactly what
did
happened.
manage. That is exactly what happened. So I managed to get Anthony today.
Although I didn't
Bundy has
ghost
been
you. I didn't ghost you because we did talk about you coming to my house and hanging televisions.
Yeah, that's right. The only time, I just want to put this out there, the only time that Anthony has wanted to talk to me is when he FaceTimed me one night, which is very strange. I honestly thought he was going to be like back in the hospital with like the Rona again. And no, it's him trying to show me the back of his TV to see if the mount that he had was correct. And then like to try to persuade me to come to his house and hang all the TVs. So that's the kind of friendship we have. Bundy, meanwhile, has been out promoting his book, Road to Redemption, which is a great holiday gift. I just want to point that out. We're gonna talk to him, I believe, right after Thanksgiving. For next week's episode, I believe the plan is for him to come back. He's been crazy busy with the rollout of that book, been very successful, been seeing all over Facebook, like he's this place is that place, promoting the book, signed copies, the works. If you're looking for a great holiday gift and you know a Flyers fan in your life, Road to Redemption. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, everywhere that I think you can find books. Go pick up a copy. We'll talk to him about that in another week or so. And you know the thing is, I led off the show like I did today instead of like with our traditional oh yes and all the exciting things because people have been down on Snow the Goalie. At least people on Twitter. You know, I didn't want Twitter to fail. All right, I didn't want Twitter to go under. I didn't want all of the people who were like bemoaning all the changeover to be right. But today, for some reason, I was like, you know what? If Twitter just flat out like croaked, it'd be totally fine. Today was a weird Flyers day, and it was a weird Flyers Twitter day, and I just have to tell you, Ant, I am ready to be somewhat positive, but I do want to point out the fact that like this team is not in a great spot, and in fact, it was one of our listeners, and I want to make sure that I get this person's name right, and put it out there correctly because someone pointed out the fact in the Twitter community, which you can request, by the way, if you're over on Twitter, you can go into communities, you can request to join the Snow the Goalie community. I think I'll link to it in this episode's description. But somebody said, like, what's going to happen first? This was like 3 or 4 days ago. What's going to happen first? The Flyers win a game or Snow the Goalie drops a new episode. And that, like, spawned a whole thing. But we did have a listener, and I think, oh, you know what? It was to Snow the Goalie. Hold on a second. It was Bob Dylan for Keep It Real, who said 10 hours ago, Flyers haven't won a game since the last Snow the Goalie podcast. And I'm not saying that we were a bad luck charm. I'm not saying that us coming back is a good luck charm, but he is correct. We last did an episode. We put an episode out on November 10th. The last time the Flyers won a game was November 8th. Later in the day, on November 10th, the Flyers lost their first of 7 straight losses. It has not been all rainbows and smiles in Flyers land, and let's talk about it.
Well, I mean, look, first and foremost, we knew that there was going to be regression, right, Russ? I mean, they weren't going to be able to continue to play at the level that they were playing when they started the season 7-3-2 through their first 12 games. They were the beneficiaries of outstanding goaltending, and when I say outstanding, like beyond your normal stretch of good goaling. I mean, Carter Hart was off the charts good. Even Felix Sandstrom, who finally got his first win against St. Louis, I think it was St. Louis. He was good even in the games that he lost. So their goaltending was just phenomenal. And then it kind of came back down to reality a little bit. Not that it's been bad, because it hasn't. The goaltending's been fine. It's just not been steel victory type goaltending. And the team's not good enough to win games consistently without that great goaltending. Throw in the fact that they are now missing 6 forwards from the lineup, who probably would have been on their top 2 lines, or at least most of them on the top 2 lines. And they're playing with a bunch of AHL caliber players. And the some of the prospects that they were, fingers crossed, hoping would improve, or get an opportunity and play like significant minutes and really kind of be that, developing for the future, then those guys have not been doing what they need to do as well. So you look at the guys like Morgan Frost, for example. Tanner Lachinski. I know he scored in the game against Calgary. Somebody gave him a 3rd star. I'd say that Tortorella's response to how he played was kind of meh. Like, it is, if you really want to look at it, like, he's not happy that just because you score a goal doesn't necessarily mean you had a good game, right? So there's some real young players that have not given the Flyers what they had hoped to this point. And then on defense, things are just not great. I mean, everybody wants to kill Ristolainen, and he's on the 3rd pair, just kind of meandering through down there. But Travis Sanheim, who just got that ridiculous contract, has not been good this year. He's been really, he's taken a big step backwards. I'm trying to, there's other things. We could dive into a lot of the stuff, with Kevin Hayes kind of being in the doghouse, and Carter Hart.
Hold on. I want to pause before you get to the Carter Hart. So hold on.
Yeah.
Just, I'm having a hard time here, Ant, because there's part of me that wants to be nice, and then there's part of me that just doesn't feel like trying to fake being nice to some of the morons on Flyers Twitter, who I don't think actually listen to this show. I think the people who listen to Know the Goalie are intelligent people who are capable of thought, who are capable of listening to opinions they might not agree with. But there are a lot of really dumb people on Flyers Twitter. So you just mentioned 3 names: Rasmus Ristolainen, Travis Sanheim, Kevin Hayes. They all have one thing in common. Well, they have a bunch of things in common, but what's one thing in common that I'm going to just laugh at?
One thing that they have in common? The contracts, maybe the big money contracts.
Yeah, and who signed these players to these contracts?
Chuck Fletcher.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't misremembering. So 3 of the players who have been underwhelming, to put it nicely, throughout like a decent chunk, especially recently, but we could then say, because it's a 7-game losing streak, that have not played well, are 3 guys who've been given long-term contracts with high AAV, and also I believe no movement clauses. Those 3 players were all signed or extended or traded for by Chuck Fletcher. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we have that, because we'll come back to that in a second. But okay, now we can continue. Now that we've, that's not good, Ant. I'm pretty sure that that's not great, because you're the guys that you locked in and really believed in to be your second pair have not had a great season. And the guy who I do think unfairly was being thrust into 1C duties when he's a 3C, Kevin Hayes, is now playing the wing, which we'll get to in a second. But go ahead. You were mentioning Carter Hart.
Yeah. And Carter Hart, again, it's not been bad. He's just not been a superstar. And there was a question about, maybe he's being overused a little bit, maybe he's being tired, and Tortorella poo-pooed that. He basically said goalies could be talked into being tired. There's this quote. I'll read the whole thing. The whole quote is fantastic. But so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons this team's lost 7 in a row. It's fundamentally flawed. But we knew this coming in.
Question.
Yeah.
Carter Hart being overused. Correct me if I'm wrong. I might have just forgotten. Forgive me. Like I might have whacked my head on a door frame. Did the Flyers bring in a legitimate backup netminder this past offseason to not necessarily push Carter Hart, but like to be good for 30 or so starts a year? Did they go out and do that, Anthony, this past offseason?
No, they did not.
You're sure? You're sure that they went into this season and they didn't go get a legitimate backup netminder? No,
they did not.
Who made that decision, Anthony? Just out of curiosity, like who's the one who built the team?
That would be Chuck Fletcher.
Oh, okay. Again, forgive me. I might have whacked my head on a door frame, got caught in a car door. All right. Thank you for filling me back in. Okay. So Carter Hart, the line. Do you have the full quote in front of you? The Tortorella said about being able to talk a goalie into being tired.
I do. So the question,
interesting line.
So the question was, you mentioned about the goaltending. You guys are going to need great goaltending. This is a really busy stretch for you guys. You're in the middle of it. There's more games coming. Are you getting any sense that Carter might be getting a bit tired due to the rapid nature of games? And here's Tortorella's response. See, I don't buy that. Not to this point. We've had a lot of days off. I think sometimes a goaltender can be talked into being tired, at least to this game here. I think he's fresh enough to play up to this game. Now, what happens our next game? I don't know. Dilly and I have those conversations. I think that's part of Carter growing too, is to handle some of the load. We'll see. Again, I do think athletes can be talked into being tired, and sometimes an athlete has to battle through it. We're in a little bit of a jam, and you're the number one guy. You battle through it, and you try to find a way to help us. I think that's part of growing as a goaltender.
Interesting. Did we think that John Tortorella would take a shot at the goalie 19 games into the season?
Well, let's put it this way, Russ. We knew, and we go way back. You have to go. I couldn't tell you what episode it was on, but it was back before the whole Fedotov issue with Russia last season, where, and I have to think it was after the World Championships when he was playing so well for Russia, where we were discussing the fact that they were going to sign him to a contract, bring him over here, not just to be the backup goalie or to get him some time in the AHL or whatever. They were bringing him over here to push Carter Hart. Mm-hmm. That was the plan. They wanted to push Carter Hart with Ivan Fedotov. And obviously that went to hell when the Russians, sent him to Siberia and said he has to serve in the military.
Yeah, hold on. Back that up again really quick. The Flyers signed him though to a contract, did they not?
They did. They did get the contract, but
he was still quasi under contract with CSKA Moscow, correct?
Well, I mean, I think that they were allowed. They were allowed to sign him when they did. Mm-hmm. The problem ended up being that I think that the CSK team got mad. Mm-hmm. They kind of then threw him under their own bus with the whole, he was dodging the draft or, dodging the military service kind of thing that you do in Russia, which a few players got caught up in with using phony, phony
it was military. Like a phony military service card.
So, yeah.
So they signed him to that contract. He was in the U.S. though, right? Like they were smart enough to get him out of Russia to sign that contract when after Russia had invaded Ukraine, right?
No, but that wasn't also. I know it.
Who signed Ivan Fedotov to that contract? I'm not putting this one on it. I'm not. Okay,
you can't put that one on Chuck. I mean, that was a lot tougher of a situation.
Different.
But I get your
But
point.
still, the guy who
But-
signed him to a
but-
contract while he was in Russia. Chuck
Well, but
Fletcher.
here's
Okay, good.
here's my I think where you could have a better argument to blame Chuck.
I know how to make a better argument. I just feel like being an asshole.
Well, no. You want to be funny about it. That's okay. But I think that the better argument is that once that goes awry, and you realize Fedotov can't come over here, you need to if the plan was to push Carter Hart, then you need to bring in a goalie who can push him. And Felix Sandstrom was never going to be that guy, or I forget what the other guy's name is that they signed and ended up. Yeah, no.
The
minor league career minor league goalie.
Worth.
Yeah.
That fart sound was about as valuable. Yeah.
That said, Ersan, I will say this: I hear they're very happy with the way he's playing in the AHL, and I have a feeling you might see him sooner rather than later. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a chance that you're going to see Sam Ersan be brought up to be the backup goalie, and really kind of, see if he can push. Now, he's not. I don't think he's ready. I really don't think he's ready to be a workload kind of goalie in the NHL. Mm-hmm. But can he play a little bit and maybe do well if he does well? Kind of make there be a couple questions about Carter. I think that's good. I think that's okay. So let's see if that happens. But I do think that's a shot at Carter Hart to say, hey, listen, pull up the big boy pants, pal. You're the number one. You're the number one goalie, man. You got to come out and help this team.
So within the past 10 days or so, John Tortorella has not talked to the media after the Columbus game, almost decapitated Sam Carchidi twice, I think, now.
Yeah. Same day.
Asking questions and also asking questions about who the next goalie was going to be, like who the next starter was going to be.
Yeah.
Got a Jesus Christ out of Tortorella for asking that.
Yeah.
And now he's taking a shot. Oh, he took a shot at the goalie.
Well, you missed the whole.
Well, I know the other one.
Okay.
He took a shot at the goalie, who's the only reason the team was even remotely relevant through the first 9 games of the season, 10 games of the season. And also made him look brilliant and get some good publicity in the process. And oh, by the way, took the number one center, or at least the guy who's thrust into being the number one center, put him on the wing, and essentially said that Noah Cates is a better center for the team right now. So he's sort of, maybe this might be a little bit hyperbolic, but he's kind of called out the goalie and sort of alienated one of the guys that had an A on his sweater last year, who's also one of the highest paid players on the roster. Hunky dory. Was there anything else that John Tortorella has done in the last 10 days that's also...
Yeah, you forgot. There was one you forgot. I was trying to keep you in order, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No problem. Don't forget, after they got smoked by Dallas, he defended how hard they're playing. So I will always defend these guys when they play hard, blah, blah, blah. And then the very next game was back in Columbus, and he's on the bench in the first period and being asked after they're down 1-0, being asked, what's going on with his team, and he said to Brian Boucher, "We suck."
So not all rainbows and smiles in John Tortorella land. I can hear some people right now though. I think many of the people listening are like, yeah, that tracks. Sounds about right. And then there's some who are like, see, these assholes are back. They only came back to complain. They only came back to be negative about the team. We're just pointing out a few things that happened along the way. Hey, Ant, I feel like now might be an okay time to bring this up because Thanksgiving is this week. And at the beginning of the season, it was before the season. I think it was back in August. I had you and Bundy predict the first 20 games of the season. Uh-huh. And the thought was, if you're in a playoff contention around Thanksgiving, chances are you end up holding that spot and you make the postseason. Actually,
80% of the time.
When you and I last
post lockout.
When you and I last did a show on the 10th, you brought that up. And the Flyers at that point were 7-3-2. Was that right?
That's correct.
Something like that. I don't
But
think
it's
that's
correct.
right.
7-3-2.
Or 7-3-2?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Was it?
Yes.
Was it? Are you sure?
They've played 19 games at this point. They had not lost at that point. And they hadn't had the losing streak at that point. So yes, they were 7-3-2. They're now 7-8.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
So they were 7-3-2. And you were like, hey, look, there's a chance. There's a chance that this team hangs on to that spot. And I'm like, oh boy. And then I maybe a little bit dickish. I said to you, well, Ant, this team does have a propensity for finding their way into a 10-game losing streak. And we're at 7. And that's interesting because I want to take back the listeners and the viewers over on the Crossing Broad YouTube channel back to something that happened a few months ago. Let's try.
Give us Flyers for
Okay. And then on the road against Washington. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wins.
7,
3 overtime losses. Oh my gosh, 7-10-3. Bundy was 7-11-2. Now here's the beauty of this, and that's it. So to recap, you had them at 7-10-3.
Mm-hmm.
Bundy had them at 7-11-2.
Mm-hmm.
If the Flyers, and this is a big if the Flyers were to lose, and let's say in regulation, in their next game, you would be 1 point off.
Yep. They will have had one more overtime loss than I would have expected. They will be 7-9-4, and I had them at 7-10-3.
So by the time people listen to this show, they're on their way to Wells Fargo Center on Wednesday.
No, it's a road game. It's a road game.
Sorry,
Wednesday.
That's right. They're in DC. There must be a fly in here flying around. That just freaks me out. Okay, so as people are on their way down on the metro towards the nation's capital, after having spent their morning in the great state of Maryland, the old line state, which will be launching fully Maryland online sports betting on Wednesday. You can read about that on crossingbroad.com and others. There's a chance that if the Flyers lose in regulation, you will have missed by 1 point. Bundy will also be close. No matter what happens, you guys were both very close in what you predicted to happen. And this is the part of the show where I say, I hate, and I probably shouldn't, but I really do hate groups of the fan base that like to overreact to everything. It's fair when you put out something that's well thought out, and when you put out a prediction for what's going to happen through the first 20 games of the season, the first half of the season, maybe even the full season. And along the way, there are going to be highs and lows. The team's going to overperform. The team's going to underperform. And then eventually there's the regression to the mean. And what you expected to happen can happen. And I know that you remember this because in the beginning of the season, you caught a lot of flack. Bundy caught a lot of flack. I caught a lot of flack. Snow the goalie caught a lot of flack because we kind of were rolling with this idea of me saying the team was horribly constructed and very flawed, and you can't bank on all these injury-prone players to be the key contributors and to also stay healthy. You and Bundy had picked the games to go the way they did. And when the Flyers started off 7-3-2, we had a lot of people who, were very excited to kind of dunk on us. And that's fine. And if you remember, I believe you and I both responded to a lot of these people saying, come back to us at the 20-game mark, come back to us at Christmas, and then let us know how that's going for you. And here we are. We're 19 games in. By the time people listen to the show, they might be 20 games in. But they're about where we expected them to be, which is all to say, sometimes people know what they're talking about. And in the case of you and Bundy, and I would argue in the case of what I've been saying about this team, we were right. It doesn't mean that things can't turn around. It doesn't mean that we don't want things to turn around. But they are. I mean, Dennis Green was the one who put this out there, Ant.
Mm-hmm.
Remember? They are who
we thought they were.
Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass. But they are who we thought they were. And let's be honest. That the Flyers are exactly who we thought they were. Now, to be fair, the team has had legitimate injuries, and they've had a lot of them happen at the same time. Earlier today, we got an email from the Flyers that had the update of some current injuries and timelines. So again, this is as of Tuesday afternoon. The Flyers sent this out. Travis Konechny is expected to be out 10 to 14 days. Wade Allison expected to be out 2 to 3 weeks. Cam Atkinson remains out on a week-to-week basis. Sean Couturier underwent back surgery and is expected to return 3 to 4 months from his surgery on October 27th, which gives him a January-February window. James Van Riemsdyk underwent surgery the next day, which is nice. I'm guessing the Flyers got some kind of like a 2-for-1 special at the surgery center by going back-to-back days. So good for them, in these uncertain times. But he was going to be out for 6 weeks from that October 28th surgery. And then Bobby Brink underwent hip surgery on July 21st and was expected to return 5 months from then. So you're looking at maybe December, January. That doesn't even mention the fact Scott Lawton was put on injured reserve, expected to miss 2 weeks, and Ryan Ellis isn't even mentioned. Now, I know that when I sit here and say, Ant, we were right. Bundy was right. Snow the goalie was right. That there are people who say, well, you guys didn't project the injuries, did you? What do you say to that? I have a thought, but I've talked too much. What do you say to the people who say, well, did you guys predict the injuries?
Well, did we predict all the injuries? No. Did we know some of these players were not going to be ready to start the season? Yes. We went on the show and said it. They're not going to have these players back at the time. It was like, Couturier was not going to make it. Ellis was not going to play. And
we didn't think Farabee would be back till December.
Right. We didn't think Farabee would be back. He actually came back early. I'm not certain that he's playing to his level. He was one of the guys that Tortorella criticized after the last loss to Calgary. We can get to that too. I didn't even mention him. So we didn't have that. But you also have to assume that there are going to be some injuries and that the team is not deep enough to withstand any. So unless they were going to get incredibly lucky and have no injuries at all, in which case they could, if they played at their best, be an approximately 500 team, then this was going to be what they were going to be. You had to expect it. And not only that, they're going to go into a game against Washington tomorrow, and who knows what will happen. They could win, or they could lose their eighth in a row. Washington's got a ton of injuries too. They're missing 6 guys as well, significant players. And it's part of the reason why they're off to a slow start. But they're kind of hanging in with the same record right now as the Flyers without all those players for long term because they have a little bit better depth. The Flyers are slowly deteriorating as it gets worse because they don't have the depth that those other teams have to withstand injury. Injuries happen to every team. Flyers have lost 2 games now to Columbus, who are down some of their best players, and yet they still found a way to beat the Flyers. Is Washington going to find? Maybe Washington finds a way to beat the Flyers tomorrow night. You going to blame the injuries when Washington's missing 6 players too? You can't always blame injuries. Yes, injuries are unfortunate. Injuries do impact outcomes of games sometimes, and but you got to fight through it. You got to get through that, and at least tread water. The perfect example that I give is in baseball. We saw it here in Philadelphia this year. Phillies played 2 months without Bryce Harper, and were able to play decent enough baseball to make it into the playoffs and then ultimately make the run to the World Series. Sometimes you have to be able to accommodate for the loss of a big name player or the loss of multiple players. And to the Phillies' credit, they had guys who could step in and get the job done, albeit for a short period of time. But the Flyers don't have that. That's what's lacking. The Flyers don't have those guys ready to come up and play. And it's obvious that Tortorella doesn't like the guys that the Flyers kind of sort of hint and tout as, well, yeah, we think this guy's ready, or we think, no, No, Tortorella doesn't like him. Doesn't want to play him. I'm telling you, he's just, he's got to the point where it's just like I can't win with some of these guys. They just can't be here. And when you have Kevin Hayes, and you mentioned Hayes, and I just wanted to read the quote, because I think that the quote is fascinating to me, because they moved him to the wing, and he went with Noah Cates. So two things that this ties to. So it goes to this. It says you had Hayes out there at the end of the Montreal game, right? And usually you like to have one, or at least one veteran guy or a couple veteran guys out there. Instead, he pulled Hayes off the ice, and he went with Noah Cates, Patrick Brown, and Zach McEwen. And Tortorella goes, I mean, you saw the guys I had out on the ice at the end. That kind of spells it out for you. That was when he was asked if he needed to see more leadership from healthy veterans. He says, I don't need to answer that question. You can just tell by the people I'm putting out on the ice. And then afterwards, when he was asked about moving Hayes to the wing and getting Noah Cates into the middle, he says, I want to continue to develop Catesy as a center. I think Catesy's more responsible down low defensively. I mean, he's basically telling you Kevin Hayes is not long for his team.
Well, I hate to point it out to John Tortorella, but there's a problem with trying to bury Kevin Hayes, and it happens to be the contract that was given out by the current GM. I don't exactly think that teams in this league are lining up for Kevin Hayes. Do you?
No.
And so,
what you're doing, he's not going to be here long term. Let's just put it that way.
Well, but
I know. How do you move him? How do you move the contract? They're going to have to do the same kind of. Well, I don't think Chuck Fletcher should be in charge of that. I mean, somebody else has to come in and figure that out.
Hold on a second now, Ann. Chuck Fletcher's he was given another offseason to fix this, okay? Actually, he didn't even have to fix it, and there was nothing wrong with what Chuck Fletcher had done, which is why he earned another offseason as the GM of this team. To be clear, he's got over $7 million cap hit for 3 seasons beyond this one. He also has a modified no trade clause. He's no longer in no movement clause land, but he's in a modified no trade. There's no chance in hell that they can move Kevin Hayes for anything. I mean, it's not even a matter of getting anything back in terms of value. It's a matter of like just getting him off the books and freeing up a roster spot. The problem is I cannot envision a scenario where there's a team that's lining up to get the services of Kevin Hayes. As we've talked about many times on this show, he does nothing particularly well. He does a few things okay. He is ultimately a 3C on a good team. He is a 2C on a pretty bad team. He is a 1C on a team that has been horrifically built and also has injury issues. I genuinely don't see a way that they can trade him. I guess here's the question, Ant. Like, if say things really went to hell fast between Tortorella and Hayes, and Tortorella just like says, I'm benching this guy. Like, I refuse to play him. Or I'm going to embarrass him. Like, I'm going to play him on the 4th line and like see if that lights a fire, but ultimately it probably won't. Then what? Like, what happens? Because if you're Spectacor, right, who doesn't seem to care about what's going on with the team, because if like you brought this guy back to build another team after years and years of just awful play, poor moves, poor deadlines, bad contracts, locking you into long-term deals at what we would probably consider like height of market value, no discounts on AAV. Like you've created this mess by letting this guy continue to do his thing poorly. I don't know how he gets out from under this contract. And if to your point, if the idea is, well, you know what, the team's going to have to move on from Chuck Fletcher and the next guy's going to have to get rid of him. Or the next lady, maybe the Flyers will break ground and they'll hire the first female GM. I don't want to throw that idea out the window. But why should it be the next person's responsibility to clean up Chuck Fletcher's mess? And if he is here, because I don't see them getting rid of Chuck Fletcher right now, if he is here, it's going to cost you draft capital, you would think, to move out from under the Kevin Hayes deal. That's after an offseason where you refuse to move draft capital to potentially get JVR off the books to free up some money for free agent signings of any kind. It all just comes back to like the fact that there's been no vision for this team. There's been no vision short term or long term. There's been no cohesive plan. It's been the ultimate fly by the seat of your pants. Like, it's been this way for 18 months at least. How do you even rationalize it? You know?
You can't. You can't. You know, you just can't.
You know, that I think that's the thing that's so frustrating is like, I come back to the people who think that you and I like to be negative about the team, or Bunny likes to be negative about the team because it's fun. Like, we enjoy crapping on the team. No, we want the team to be good. We would like to cover a winning team. It'd be really nice to like go through a year of this podcast where we're like, yo, Ant, look at this. Like, the Flyers are, 27-3. Like, what a nice start to the season. This is great. Like, playoff hockey's going to be coming back to Philadelphia. They're going to have the Wells Fargo Center with all this beautiful, the redesigned and like reformatted Wells Fargo Center. Like, they're filling the place up. It's great. Everything's hunky dory. We want that. You don't think we want to like be able to capitalize on that? You don't think like we want to have like watch parties that are going to like draw significant numbers that isn't just going to be like a bunch of pissed off Flyers fans, which by the way, we still might at some point in the next few months. But like, you don't think we would want that? You don't think that we want to like capitalize on that? Maybe like work on things, with the team to promote certain things and like be really excited about like where this team is going. Of course we do. But like there's no hope with this current front office regime. They've done nothing to instill confidence. And so I come back to like, what have they done to show you that they're worth a damn? Like, what has Chuck Fletcher done to show you that he is worthy of getting the benefit of the doubt on any of this? And I think the answer is he hasn't, there isn't, and there won't be. I just don't know how long this organization is willing to hang on to him, out of fear that they're going to look like idiots. If they fire him, and what was it, 3 years ago? We're sitting in press row, or was it 4 years ago? We're sitting in press row. You look at me and you go, by the way, Hextall's going to go before Hackstall. We talked about it a little bit on the press row show that day. It was a Black Friday game against the Rangers, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to do that right now with Chuck Fletcher because I don't see a scenario where they can cut bait on Fletcher and not look like absolute morons, right? Like, they're the ones who chose to go back down this path again. We knew what was going to happen. Like, how long do you honestly think it's going to last? Not how long do you think it should last? How long do you think they're going to keep this guy in this position?
You got me. At this point, it's, to me, when he failed to do what he should have done this summer, or at least outline what he was planning to do this summer, and let us know what this was going to be. He should. I think he's on borrowed time now, right? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if this team continues to spiral down towards the bottom of the division, and it becomes apparent, by the holidays that by Christmas holiday, I mean, that he's going to be that the Flyers are going to be sellers and not buyers at the trade deadline because they're not in the playoff race. I don't think you give Chuck Fletcher the opportunity to put that together again. Like, why would you? Like, why would you see the failures of the past couple seasons and say, let's let him do it again? Like, at that point, I think you really have to say, we've given you as much opportunity as you can. The team is still not improving. And while you can make excuses about injuries and the like, and while you've helped reshape, the front office, et cetera, I just don't see it, Russ. I just don't see it as and something that should be happening. And if it does, if they do allow it to continue, I think that the organization is making an organizational mistake that can continue to set the team back further than they even are going to be.
Yeah.
Because you can't continue to let him try and work his way out of mistakes. Because if you're looking at it now, I mean, it's still way too early to call the Sanheim contract a mistake. And it's technically still early to call the Ristolainen contract a mistake. Okay, because you've only played 19 games in a season with a bad team. Let's see how those players look with better players around them, et cetera, et cetera. And then maybe at that point it becomes, okay, now we can evaluate, and okay, they're still not good enough. Now it's a bad contract.
Part of the problem, though, is that they were signed to those contracts to be two of your better players. I mean, they're two of your higher paid players. So
correct.
I know what you're saying, but like, let's also be real here.
Right. But the team needs to be better overall in order to really establish whether or not those contracts are worth it. But like a guy like Kevin Hayes, I think we've come to the realization. And if you go back to when they signed him, Russ, like, we did not like the contract then. Right? We didn't like the contract then. It was a bad contract.
Assholes, though, man. We were horrible people. We were very negative because we didn't like the contract, and we pointed out that he's a 2.5 C.
Yeah.
We were awful people for that.
Yes.
Here's our Mad Amp. I want everybody to enjoy themselves. I want everybody to enjoy being a Flyers fan. But like, we need the Rainbows and Smiles Brigade to like just have a wake up call, because when you want to believe that a team is going to be able to be a Cinderella and to overachieve and everything, like, that's great. And when a team starts off like this team did this year, 7-3-2, you are by all means, able, willing, and within your right to celebrate those wins and to feel really good about being a fan of the team. But what you don't have the right to do is to then turn around and say that anybody who's been critical of the team is just doing it for show. Mertitas did that. I mean, Mertitas said that, remember, and we went on to his show, and he kind of backtracked a little bit, that I'm like this hot take artist. And my whole thing has been, I just don't think the team's good, and I don't think the team's built very well, and I don't think they did what they were supposed to do or should have done. We just need to come to a point where it's like, look, we don't want to be right. We didn't want to be right about this, but we are. There is no scenario in which this team turns it around and becomes like a legitimate playoff contender. Now, could you potentially get back some of these guys in the next few weeks, in the next couple of months? Could you maybe get Sean Couturier back by February in a meaningful way? Could Ryan Ellis like just somehow rise from the dead and be part of this team? Well, Cam Atkinson, we don't know what's going on there. I have a theory, but like Cam Atkinson, does he come back? Is he in a good enough place to come back? Is he healthy enough to come back? All right, cool. If you add all those pieces in, like, what are they? They're probably like a middling team, maybe a sort of bubble team, but that's it. In a way, them losing 7 straight and kind of getting back to like where we thought they would be, it comes back to that idea of like your only way to add elite talent, given your current cap situation that Chuck Fletcher put you in, like the only thing you can do is hope that you get one of the top picks in the draft, and like maybe that guy ends up being one of the foundational pieces of turning this thing around over the next few years. I'm so frustrated because this is exactly what I've been worried about. This is exactly what I've been saying for over a year about this guy and his inability to build a team. He's not creative. He doesn't find value along the margins. It's the thing that I always go back to. Everything he does is milquetoast. It is like the safest play. If the guy's ever been around the state of Minnesota, you bet your ass he's going to be interested in them. Like there are no like going and finding a diamond in the rough. It doesn't happen. He doesn't do it. He doesn't have the ability to do it. He's done it once in his career. It's Kaprizov. It was a great, 5th round pick. Awesome. It's an anomaly. It's not a regular occurrence. Some people have a hard time with that. He just doesn't have it. And this organization has just chosen to ride with this guy this whole time. And In doing so, especially over the last 18 months when I've been the most critical, he has locked this team into long-term contracts, high cap hits, high AAV, has given no movement clauses like it's candy on Halloween, including to players that don't, one, maybe belong in the league, Nick Delorier. Like, he has put you into a position that doesn't only make you bad this year, it makes you bad for multiple years. But at the same time, the team can't be bad enough to be a bottom feeding, bottom three team that like gets to get a few top lottery picks like the Devils did. Like he somehow has put them in this weird purgatory state that like you're going to need an all-time higher in the guy after him that takes this job to pull this team out of it, to pull the nose up on this.
Because I'm not certain. Well, when you say all-time higher, let me ask you, what can you expand on that? Because I'm not necessarily certain that the Sixers need a name higher, but they need someone who's. I mean, the Six. Did I say Sixers? Holy shit!
You did. It's just because you probably just saw that Ben Simmons missed 2 free throws, and we all get free Chick-fil-A.
Free chicken. Don't forget,
if you have
free Chick-fil-A tomorrow. Yeah, that's right.
Brickin' for chicken. If you have the Chick-fil-A app, don't forget you have I think 24 hours or 12 hours to. You
have to do it before they open in the morning.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, Brickin' for chicken.
This,
I did. That did cross across
all those people who are like, "Who gives a shit about basketball? Who cares about the Sixers?" No, you do, person. You do, person, because Chick-fil-A nuggets are delicious. Anyway,
but no, the Flyers. It just has to be someone who's got the vision to work their way out of this mess and get the team where it needs to get to. Doesn't have to be a big name. Doesn't have to be, but it could. Because I think that there are a lot of smart people out there who maybe have not had GM's jobs yet, who could come in and potentially do this gig.
I agree. When I say an all-time higher, I'm not saying an established name, and I'm not saying somebody who's like part of the old boys club in the NHL. To be clear, okay. I'm saying the hire that they make is going to have to be like somebody who almost like assuredly goes down as like one of the brightest minds of their generation to like come out of this, because of how bad the cap situation is, because of how bad the pipeline is, with the exception of a few. I mean, there are a few good prospects, but like the team is not in a great long-term situation right now. So it's going to your point, require somebody with a ton of creativity. And I dare say it's going to take somebody who has gravitas with some of these other GMs in the league who are going to be willing to play ball. As I've mentioned in the past, Chuck Fletcher was supposed to be that guy. He was supposed to be somebody that has gravitas with other GMs, somebody that like other GMs in the league would respect enough to kind of help out of a bad cap situation on a short-term deal like JVR. That ship sure as shit sailed in the offseason. We didn't see that at all, did we? So I don't think you can make another run-of-the-mill, retread hire. I do think it's going to have to be somebody who might not have held a GM job in this league to this point. Somebody who, dare I say, maybe worked for a team that's actually been successful this decade. Like, that would also be helpful. I wouldn't mind if you, like, pulled somebody off of the front office tree of, like, a Colorado or a Tampa Bay or, like, a team who's actually worth a damn. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to get Chuck Fletcher 2.0? All right, well, at least you tried, Am I crazy? Am I nuts?
Well, I mean, you don't want to say, oh, well, at least we tried getting somebody different. You got to get it right. You got to get it, because this.
Well, they didn't get it right with the guy that was supposed to be a sure thing. Right. The guy that they kind of sold the fan base on being a sure thing.
No, I agree.
They went and plucked Ron Hextall out of LA. Seemed like a good hire. There was a lot of logic and intelligence to that. Part of those Kings teams, that quasi, that if you want to call it the Kings dynasty, made sense. It didn't work. Fine. You went and you brought in this, experienced executive that you said was going to be the guy. Clearly hasn't been. The pendulum just kind of has to swing the other way again, doesn't it? Because like if you're going to bring in Chuck Fletcher 2.0 right off the bat, another retread who like was let go by his team because he had another uninspiring run running another team for the last 2 years, like that sure ain't going to inspire confidence here, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're right. No, it can't be a retread. They got to get it right. They just got to get it right. Or if you say if it is going to be a quote unquote retread, somebody with a track record, it has to be a pretty flawless track record.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Is
got to
that
be.
guy out there?
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, I'm sure that there are guys who are out there. The question is, are they looking for jobs right now? That's that's what it comes
Do you have any
down
names
to.
that come to mind, Anthony?
No, I
Do you have
don't.
anybody right now?
I'm not throwing any names out there. That's the last thing I need to do is put names out there and then have people say, San Filippo said blah, 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 and it never happened. No.
Mhm.
I would go the different route. I would go younger, newer. I mean, that's the direction I would head in. I wouldn't go the old hat way, but that's not to say that there isn't a possibility out there that could work.
Counterpoint, if you go with the unproven GM, could be problematic because you have a very very bullish head coach, somebody who knows what he wants, and there is a possibility that the coach might try to railroad the new GM, have his way. Again, like that's another thing. That's like yet another thing that this GM oversaw, was bringing in this coach that raises your floor. And like, it just, folks, the phrase of the day is cognitive dissonance, which we've talked about on this show before. There are so many things that are fundamentally, constantly just clashing from this past offseason that just prove that there was never a plan. And really quick, because apparently this needs to get addressed. It is possible that when you have an opinion about a team and like what you think their vision should be, that like along the way, you're going to also make a case that like, if this is what we're going to do, then perhaps you should do some of these other things. Case in point, you and I were at odds going into the offseason about what the Flyers should do. I was of the thought they should tear it down. You said, you know what? Chuck Fletcher says aggressive retool. There is a possibility that they can kind of plug and play. They can maybe figure this thing out. The team doesn't have to go to zero. They could actually be okay and maybe turn it around in a year or two. I was very much in like, tear it down to the studs. Bundy kind of fell in my camp, I would say a little bit more than in your camp. And then the GM who promised the aggressive retool oversaw an offseason where they hired the win now coach, but were not willing to make any of the win now acquisitions. So I went into the offseason saying tear it down. When the GM made it very clear they weren't going to tear it down, I said, well, then all right, the hell with it. If that's what you're going to do, then you better clear that space for Johnny Gaudreau, who wants to play for his hometown team. Or you better go figure out a way to get in on the Alex DeBrincat sweepstakes, because if you're really in this like aggressive retool win now mode, then those are two players who make you better, who kind of fit the timeline of your coach better. And those things don't fly in the face of one another. When the set of circumstances change, you have to adapt to it. All right, it was clear Chuck Fletcher didn't want to tear it down. All right, well then, if that's the case, you probably should do one of these two things. He didn't do either. So I honestly, Ant, like I don't think I've ever been this flummoxed by the moves of a front office executive. And I need to know, is there a way for this to get fixed? Short of them letting this GM go through another full season, another trade deadline, like, is there hope?
Well, yes. And the thing of it is that we can probably have the same argument at the end of next season that we had at the end of this season. And I mean, obviously we gotta wait and see whether or not how things kind of play out. Where the team is at that time of year, at that time, what the prognosis is for players like Couturier, Atkinson, and those types moving forward. But I think that the same argument can be had next year, where you sit there and say there's a way to do this in 1 to 2 years, and then there's a way to do it where you tear it all down and you're looking at a lengthy 6-7 year rebuild. I still don't see that. I just don't.
I don't want to see a 6-7 year rebuild, to be clear.
But that's how long it takes. I argue to people who take your argument all the time. I say, show me where it doesn't take that long. Show me where it's happened that it doesn't take that long. And if the argument is the New York Rangers, I argue back that the Rangers didn't have the same situation. The Rangers had superstar players who wanted to come to New York and play there regardless of what their situation was. And that their young players that they drafted at the top of that draft did not contribute to the development of that team as quickly as it turned around. That was more akin to what I was looking for. Actually, they got a bonus because they got both. They got the high draft picks and the stars that came in at the same time. Okay, so that was a unique situation. Other than that, every other team that built itself to be a long-term Stanley Cup contender is at least 6 years before they were legitimately good enough to be there, and some even longer. Like Colorado, we talked about them last year. They finally won the Cup, but it all started with a complete teardown when they drafted Gabriel Landeskog 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
They had to go through a second teardown to get Nathan McKinnon. Like, they did it twice. Chicago, they had it build over several years. But, I mean, yeah, it was only 3 years after Patrick Kane but they had to be bad for several years before that too to get that, because they also got Taves in that in that run as well. And Kurt and Keith, Duncan Keith, and the other defenseman. God, why is his name slipping my mind at this point? But anyway, the point is that they had to do the same thing. You know, so teams, you have to, even the Penguins with Crosby, like, he was first round pick in 2005, and yeah, they went to the final in 2008, but he was the third. He was the final pick. Okay, they had Malkin before him and Fleury before him. So you're looking at 6 years for Pittsburgh. Yeah. I mean, so it takes that long to get there. So if you're going to tear it all the way down, and that's fine, you just have to be prepared for it to take 5-6 years, 7 years, maybe longer. Could be.
And
depends on how lucky you get.
I would say that the flip side, right? Like, I hate the fact that we've come back to this. The flip side to it is, like, this team, the way that it was constructed, like, was capable of being in the bottom three this year. And, like, in theory, if you like a lot of the other pieces that you have and you are able to get off of a couple of contracts, this doesn't have to be a 6 or 7 year thing. This could be a, hey, you know what? Like, we are going to suck hard for Bedard, as somebody said on Twitter today. Like, you could do that, and Bedard is immediately going to be an impactful player for your team. And, like, you could theoretically turn this around in a year or two. You could theoretically, like, put this team with the young players under John Tortorella's tutelage to, like, learn how to be professionals, all that. Move a couple of contracts with a competent GM, which you don't have right now, and then, like, just, you know, see where the chips land. I don't know, man. I don't want to be negative. I don't. God, I feel like this whole thing was us just kind of sitting here going, well, we kind of told you so. Now, the funny thing is, 10 days ago, we put an episode out that said the Flyers might be better than we thought. And I think the name of this episode is going to have to be "The Flyers Are Who We Thought They Were."
I agree.
So I know that you were really excited because another 5-star review came in. And you love 5-star reviews. And as we've pointed out to the people before, you're always willing to, if you are willing to put out a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts. We love that. If you're on Spotify and you click on the Snow the Goalie logo to go to the show page, you can leave a 5-star rating, which is very helpful, especially in their rankings. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you can go there and leave a 5-star rating. That's really helpful. Their weird algorithm, it's excellent. But if you leave a 5-star review, it's even better. This one is from Sam M. 5 stars. Must listen podcast if you're a Flyer at heart. H-A-R-T, capitalized. See that? Love this show. Seems like Russ itches to do his impressions, different voices, much more now that he's no longer a teacher. Bundy, we miss you, but congrats on the book. Looking forward to reading. Clear, concise. I love it.
Very good.
Very good. I didn't do a single voice on the show. How about that?
You know what the funny thing was is you were doing them beforehand.
Was
Before
I?
we hit record, you were doing it. You were doing your Morgan Freeman beforehand.
Oh, I was. That's right. I was. I forget why. Profanity-laced tirade about something, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, Anthony, here we are on Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast. The People's Podcast, the Players Podcast, the Prognosticators Podcast. Andy Dufresne was my friend. I hope to shake my friend's hand again. Zewatuneo. Get busy living or get busy dying. That's goddamn right. Anthony, really quick, what's one thing you're thankful for as we get people ready for the Thanksgiving holiday on Thursday? Is there anything that you're thankful for in your life right now, in this moment?
What am I thankful for?
There's an easy answer.
She's saying it in the background over here.
No, not her.
Not her? I'm not allowed to say Maria?
You could, but like, that's not the easy answer.
Because I said, what am I thankful for? And she's sitting on the couch behind me and she goes, me.
Yeah. I mean, you could be, but that's not the easy answer.
That's not the easy answer?
No.
Tell me the easy answer.
It's not even me, although you should be. The answer, of course, is the thousands of people who decide for some reason every week to go onto their favorite podcast app
and listen to us.
Go over to the Crossing Broad YouTube channel, listen to us talk about this team, or watch us talk about this team. Those are the people who I'm thankful for. I mean, obviously, I'm thankful for my wife. I'm thankful for the kids. Thankful for the baby that's going to be born in like another month and a half. I'm not ready for that yet. Still not ready. I'm very excited. We're redoing our entire basement. Office is going to move down there, which means I'm going to be able, when we record podcasts at night, like this one, if we have to, I can yell because I'll be in the basement. I won't be like sharing walls here with like my daughter in the next room and all that. Don't have to worry about scaring anybody. It's going to be great.
No, I'm just convinced you decided to have a fourth kid so that you could be the outright winner on the Crossing Broad group for number of children.
That I'm in first place right now, aren't I? Oh,
well,
I'm tied with you.
Yes, 3 ties me.
Yeah.
So 4 puts you in. That's why I said outright first place. Yeah. That's why you just your ego was
our old pal.
You couldn't share the tie. You had to jump ahead.
Our old pal Phil Kydell has been saying for the longest time that my wife and I are on the drive for 5. And I said, if that ever happens, I'm going to drive to your house. I'm going to smack you upside the head, boyo. So,
yeah, I think you said that when I suggested number 4.
Yeah, I blame you. I blame anybody who put it in the universe. But you know what? This is going to be a good kid. I'm feeling okay about it. I'm feeling good.
Good.
The kids are good. We like our kids. Our kids are good. They're solid. So anyway, hope everybody who listens has a great Thanksgiving. Hopefully, if you're listening to this on a Wednesday, you might be traveling. Have a safe trip. If you've already done your traveling, have a safe trip. If you are going to be subjected to family that you don't want to see on Thanksgiving, and you decide to like leave the meal early because you can't stand them anymore, have a safe trip. If you decide that you're going to flop like I've seen a lot of at the World Cup, like your sister-in-law who you hate so much, you happen to just kind of trip over her foot and use that as the reason to get out of there, have a safe trip. See, we're just going to keep this going. Who knows? I will tell you, I'm excited. I like the people we bring over for Thanksgiving, that we invite over. It's all family. Love them. We have a nice time. Feel good about it. But for those who have to like sit through politics and all the other kind of nonsense at Thanksgiving, I'm sorry in advance. And are you excited for Thanksgiving? Do you like Thanksgiving? Like, where does this rank?
Meal. It's my favorite meal of the year.
Is your favorite holiday though?
Yeah, I think so. You got to remember, being in an Italian household, it's like, you basically don't have to do much of anything. You just kind of sit there and watch football and eat food all day, right?
Mm-hmm. Anthony, you got to come in and watch this Buffalo Bills, Detroit Lions.
I know.
First of a triple header, first game. Come on, Anthony.
Yep.
Right.
Dallas Giants, right? That's a good one.
Dallas Giants in the late afternoon window. You got the Vikings and the Patriots in prime time.
Yeah,
they're actually
all 3 games
have games.
All 3 games have some meaning. Yeah, but they're playing well. They're playing well. They've won 3 in a row. They've been competitive in other games. they're not going to beat Buffalo, but at least it could be a good game. I mean, it could be
If we get like a
game.
really cool, like we get like a 42-35 game
Yeah, it
to
could
start
be.
Thanksgiving, that'd be pretty cool. I'd be okay with that. So
Could be fun.
we got a triple header there. We've got the World Cup. I know that you hate soccer, but like the World Cup,
I watched a little bit of the first game against Wales.
go on.
I did.
Okay.
Just a little bit, not a lot.
Supporting the United States men's national team against
Yeah.
Wales. How about that?
Yeah.
So you got to, I mean, if you were a Union fan, you would know that like Gareth Bale has now ripped the heart out of the chest of Philadelphia fans, at least, and some Americans now twice in 2.5 weeks.
Yep.
First with the extra time goal that forced penalty shootout in MLS Cup that LAFC won against the Union, and then drawing the penalty on a boneheaded play, bad tackle. They lose. Well, they tie the game, but to me, it's a loss. Anyway, World Cup's going on all morning and into the early afternoon. You've got the triple header of NFL games.
And the Flyers are opening the building early. For those of you who are World Cup fans, they are opening the building early if you have tickets to the game to go down and watch on Friday and go down and watch USA England at 1:00. So if you have a ticket, if you have tickets to the Flyers game, 2:00. If you have tickets to the Flyers, the building opens at 1:00. So if you have tickets to the game for Flyers Penguins, 5:30 start time on Friday, you can go down to the building. The building will open as early as 1, and they will have all the concessions open and everything, and they will be playing the game on the screens to watch USA England. So
that's really cool.
If you are a soccer fan and a Flyers and going to the Flyers Penguins game, it's an opportunity.
Let me just say really quickly here to our folks in the Flyers business side of the organization who listen to the podcast. I have to give them some credit here on that. They've done a nice job with things that are like related to sports and opening up the arena.
Yeah.
The time around the World Series run comes to mind.
The
They're doing a good job with that stuff. Like that's really cool.
Showing the Phillies during the game, Flyers games.
This thing is really cool. They are doing some things well. I don't know how much it's going to make a difference in terms of attendance because of the team being bad. But I will say I do think it's a good thing to do.
Here's the
and
difference.
It's certainly
I think it's
going to get good publicity, and it's going to get some of the good faith for the organization back.
Here's the difference it's making.
From some fans.
Here's the difference it's making. It has stemmed the tide of constant anger at the organization. Yes, fans are disappointed with the team. They're disappointed with where they're at and where how long it's going to take for them to be good again. But there was always and the business side sucks too. And they're terrible. And, and we were at the heart of that because we pointed a lot of the stuff out that they did wrong. But they've really stemmed that tide. Mm-hmm. So, and like you said, it could build that goodwill going forward, and that's great. And hopefully they continue that. Because it could be the one thing the one warning I give, and I give them, and I give, mentioned here, but hopefully they're listening, is
they are.
Just because you're not seeing results in ticket sales does not mean the goodwill is not being accepted by the fans. You have to maintain it. Yep. You can't go back to, we gave that a shot. It didn't work. Let's try something else. No. You have to stay with that because the fans will come back and they will be there. Use the Phillies as the example. Right? They're going to need to see it. The Phillies fans needed to see the team make the playoffs. We talked about it at the end of the season. They were in that playoff push, and they weren't drawing anything more than 30,000. Some nights 22, 23, 24. So like half full stadium, even with the playoff push happening. Okay? But once it happened, once they got in, you saw what it was like. Wells Fargo Center will be like that if the Flyers make the playoffs. But don't give up on the fan base just because the team's not succeeding and they're not coming to the games. They're there. They're waiting. They're just waiting their opportunity. Continue to build the goodwill.
is fire the incompetent GM.
I would blow up the whole front office.
Oh, that's right. You brought this up months ago. Here, let me throw this out to you as like the last hypothetical for this team. So we fully expect that in the event they get rid of Chuck Fletcher, they're going to just install Danny Briere into that job. Which I I don't exactly feel the best about. Not that I have anything against Danny Briere. But if they were to do that, like say they relieve Chuck Fletcher of his duties in late December, early January, and they put Briere into that position, and they say Lombardi or Holmgren or Clark or somebody's going to serve as like a quasi advisor, or they're all going to serve as a collective brain trust to help young Danny Briere. Do you give him that job with an interim title to give yourself the flexibility to have an actual search in the offseason when the best of the best executive candidates and pool is out there?
100%. 100%. There's not even a question. It's got to be interim. Because
they will.
Well, I don't know. That's what I'm trying to say to you. I mean, I'm not convinced that they're going to get rid of Chuck. I'm like they haven't yet. So I can't say that. Yeah, that's what. Yes, that would do that. Of course. Well, I don't know. I mean, they haven't done what they should have done at this point already. So I would say you have to 100% make it interim. And yeah, you could say let's wait till the off season, but I wouldn't. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't. If Dave Scott was willing to fire Ron Hextall on Black Friday, then he needs to get someone else in here. It's the same concept. Bring the new guy in, gives him a few months to kind of see what he has at his disposal. Okay? Let him get through the trade deadline. And that way, meeting with the scouts, getting prepared for the draft for next year and for offseason and free agency and all that good stuff. You got to give them time. You can't ask someone to come in as soon as the season's over and expect them to hit the ground running with a draft and free agency having not been in place. I think the time to replace a general manager is in season. If you don't have the next person lined up that's going to do that and you have to go with interim Danny Briere might only be interim for
a few months.
Not even.
Yeah.
Not even.
Hey, last thing here before we leave. Does this mean I was right?
What do you mean?
About Chuck Fletcher? Because remember how like
well,
year and a half ago I said it was time, and you said, well, Russ, you kind of
well, it
have
wasn't
to give
time.
The guy.
Then. It wasn't time. Then.
You're like, hey, you kind of have to give the guy time.
You do. You had to.
I said, I don't think this is gonna work.
Okay.
Was I right? I was right. All right, I got you.
But you had to give the guy time, considering what he had to deal with a pandemic. You had to give the guy time.
Don't you? I haven't dropped an F-bomb this whole show. I've been a good little boy.
You had to.
So did every other GM in the league.
No, but the point was that
so did every other GM.
He could only do so much because of it. He was limited because of it. He couldn't turn it around. So he had his opportunity now, and he screwed it up. He's had his opportunity to do it and didn't complete it. But at that time, you couldn't say get rid of Chuck Fletcher. At the time, you couldn't. He was coming off of a season where they were second round of the playoffs, and you wanted to get rid of him. And it's like, you gotta give him a chance, man.
Yeah, I was right. All right. Hey, thanks for listening to Snow the Goalie. Thanks for.
That was a motorcycle that just flew past my house, maybe like 90 miles an hour.
Are you like living on 95?
No, but the road that I live on sometimes, because there's a big gap between the traffic lights, that people tend to fly unfortunately for a stretch.
I don't want to get personal here, but the people who are watching on the stream, they might notice that's a different backdrop, Anthony. Is that going to be your backdrop from now on? Because it looks different.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it'll be
used to for a while.
I'm sure if it's going to be the one for now on. It's just that I'm sitting at the dining room table. There is an office downstairs. I do have an injury that needs to be resolved. that I don't have a comfortable enough chair to sit in. So I can't really be in that office space. So I'm setting up on the dining room table on a much more comfortable chair to sit on. However,
What I'm trying to say, everybody, is that Anthony's in a different house, or at least it looks like it. And
I am.
that's a
Yes,
lovely.
this is a new home.
There we go. You're like
Yes.
sitting here talking about like hemorrhoids or something, and I'm talking about
It's
the
not
fact that you've got
hemorrhoids.
like, well,
It's
listen,
not hemorrhoids.
FannyDoctor.com. We just did like
It's
a
a
fake
it's
ad
a
read,
it's
right?
a hip flexor injury.
Oh,
what it
that's
is.
brutal.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
Yeah, it's bad.
Stretch out those hip flexors, Anthony, and you know what'll help them? That turkey you're gonna have on Thanksgiving. Favorite
Yes,
side
it
dish
will.
before we go?
Cranberry sauce.
The can or homemade cranberry
The
sauce?
canned. I eat them both, to be honest. I can eat them both. But the canned one is just, there's something about it that just, I love it. I know it's weird.
Us on
I know
the
it's
final
weird.
Episode of Snow the Goalie.
I also like
podcast.
stuffing. Stuffing's also,
Well, stuffing's great. Yeah,
stuffing's also great. Sweet potatoes.
Do you do the marshmallows on top?
Yes.
Do you do sprouts with pancetta?
We do sprouts. Sometimes they do them with, it depends on who's making them. But yes. Sometimes yes.
Do
We
any
also
kind of
have
like a
what's
the
it-
green
what
bean,
else-
green
what else?
beans, green beans
casserole. Yeah, almond
with the crunchy onions on top.
You mean almondine with the almonds on top?
No, we don't do the almonds. We do
Oh.
we do like the little the crispy onions.
We do almondine, right, hon? No.
Look, he's got to ask her. See that? Uh-huh.
What is it? She says it's casserole. I don't know.
Oh, it's a string bean casserole. Everybody knows that. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Almonds on your string bean casserole. I don't know.
You've never heard of green bean almondine?
I have not. I've not had that at Thanksgiving.
Okay.
It's just got almonds in it.
Yeah. So, and then the other else
Do
we do, that a lot
Mm-hmm.
of, I'm not sure a lot of people do for Thanksgiving. We also have ham.
I love ham. I love a good ham. I am not judging you at all. I think it's totally fine. I wish I can convince my wife to add a ham to the spread here.
Because
She
I do a
will
little,
not.
I'll do a little bit of turkey, but I'm not a huge turkey guy. I'll do a little bit just to have it because it's turkey, it's Thanksgiving, but I much prefer the ham.
You know the problem. The reason that I think a lot of people don't like turkey is because they live in families that don't do the turkey correctly. So let this be my final bit of advice to the fine folks listening to Snow the Goalie who are an hour 15 into this episode. Okay, the correct way to cook a turkey, and it's going to sound inhumane, so sorry. You cut the backbone out. Like I used to be a big fan of like the idea of spatchcock, which is where you cut the spine out and then you press down on the breastbone, and so the turkey is flat, right? You follow me? You follow me, camera guy? ShamWow, remember the ShamWow guy? You follow me, camera guy? Anyway, so instead of just like having it where it's flattened out, which is good because it gives more surface area, it allows the air in the oven to it cooks the turkey more evenly. What we've done the last few years, and I have to tell you is great, is we do a dry brine. So you salt it, right? You put it in the fridge for a day or two, salted. It extracts a lot of the moisture, right? A lot of the excess moisture. And what you do is you actually butcher the turkey down. So you cut the legs off, the thighs off, the breasts off, the breasts, the wings, all of it. Like it's separated. You do 2 sheet pans, preferably with the racks in the pans, so it's elevated a little bit. And that's how you do your turkey. It'll be done in if you do it, I think it's like 425. You do that for like an hour and a half, and then you drop the temperature a little bit. It's the Ina Garten method. Look up the Ina Garten method. Every time you do a turkey like this, you are going to have the juiciest, most delicious turkey with crispy skin. It is fantastic. It's the only way to cook a turkey. The only way.
Okay.
And that's the food advice here from the Only Flyers podcast. Because don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, oh yes, this is Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast, Abuse podcast, Players podcast, Prognosticators podcast, Pedialyte podcast, Pampers podcast, the somewhat inconsistent but always loving Flyers podcast. Make sure you go follow Anthony over on Twitter at AntSanPhilly. You can follow me on Twitter at JoyOnBroad. You can follow the show at Snow the Goalie. Remember, Road to Redemption, Bundy's book, available wherever you get your books. You can find this podcast anywhere that you find podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, anywhere you get your podcasts. Don't forget, as you're preparing your turkey, you're making the mashed potatoes, you're out there kind of making a nice little pan gravy, okay? You've got like a wireless device. You've got like an Amazon Echo. You've got like a Google Home. You've got a Siri-enabled device. You know, you can ask nicely, Siri or Google or Alexa. You just say, play the latest episode of Snow the Goalie, a Flyers podcast, Bingo Bango Bongo. Our voices will fill your home with love and warmth and like some Italian joy, you know? That's what you do. You could also, in between, like got halftime of a football game, got halftime of the World Cup, something like that. You pop us on your TV, on YouTube. Go to the Crossing Broad YouTube channel. There's the whole playlist for all the Snow the Goalie episodes. We link to that in the description of this episode. You can also go to snowthegoalie.com. If all of this is too confusing for you, just go to snowthegoalie.com. You'll find the video of the episode at the top. And then I think it's the Apple Podcasts, and then it's Spotify. All those players are on the site as well. You can go there. You can listen. You can watch. Make sure you subscribe to the show. Leave a 5-star review. Leave a 5-star rating on whatever podcast app you listen to. And we'll be back. We'll be back next week. I think, I know I've said this like the last 2 times. I think we're going to go back to being weekly, Ant. So we're going to try to shoot for next week. Hopefully have Bundy back for that one. We'll see. Now that we've broken the curse, the Flyers should win on Wednesday. If they don't, Anthony will be 1 point off, and he will be absolutely insufferable on Twitter and wherever you get your Flyers coverage. So just watch out, folks. Anyway.
But I will be at the game on Friday.
There you go. I won't be, but you will be.
I'll be there
I
Friday.
have something going on. Can I tell you what I have going on?
What do you got going on?
I'm making sure my son's like aren't out of bed. Have you seen like the Facebook ads for like the Home Alone thing? They're doing the Home Alone Philadelphia Orchestra thing. Have you seen this? No?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the Philadelphia Orchestra is going to be playing the music and like the movie's on in the background. Our kids have never seen the movie before. They ask us every year around Christmas to see the movie. I was like, you know what? This is the year. We're going to go. I didn't even know this was a thing. When I saw it, I'm like, we got to do it. Got to do it. Got the tickets. Very
That's
excited.
fun.
So we're going to do this weekend. So that's going to be fun.
That's
Anyway.
a fun one.
Anyway, enjoy your Thanksgiving. Everybody who's watching, listening out there, enjoy your Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. We're thankful for you all. Anthony's, thankful for Maria. I'm thankful for my wife and kids. Anthony's thankful for his kids. We're thankful for everybody. We're thankful for all of you. Thanks for listening. This has gone on too long. Thanks for sticking around this long. We'll talk to you again next week. Subscribe, watch, all that. Snow the Goalie, All You Flyers podcast. Peace out, Cub Scouts.